No, you have to rush off quickly. Khusela, thank you so much for making the time. I know it's too early to start talking about conclusions, but just sum up the past few days.
Well, thank you very much, Desiree. I think it's been a very successful summit. The heads of state came together, in Africa. Our theme was BRICS in Africa, so it was not just about South Africa, but the continent as a whole. They were looking at issues of inclusive growth and shared prosperity, but also how our countries are able to prepare appropriately for the fourth industrial revolution. So we've had a number of sessions, as you would have seen, the closed session, the open session, but we've also had cultural exchanges. Now, this is because the key pillars of BRICS is economic relations as well as trade, it's peace and security issues, as well as people-to-people relations. So we've managed to cover all of those issues. The Johannesburg Declaration was adopted yesterday by the heads of state, and this declaration speaks to how BRICS countries will continue to cooperate in order to strengthen multilateralism, in order to ensure the building of a more just world order. So those are the conversations that are going on. As you indicated this morning, we will be joined by what we call the BRICS outreach countries. These are other countries on the African continent that will be engaging with leaders of BRICS. But we also have something called the BRICS Plus. Now, BRICS Plus is other countries that are, and it's not just other countries, but also regional and international organizations that are outside of BRICS, but form part of these emerging and developing countries that are so integral to the advancement of the objectives of BRICS.
It's interesting how the Joburg Declaration also incorporated what South Africa is celebrating right now, the centenary celebration.
Oh, indeed. President Mandela has been at the center of this particular summit. It's not only BRICS, the non-aligned movement, the African Union, and in September, the United Nations. All of these bodies coming together to celebrate the role that Tata Mandela played as a global icon of reconciliation, of peace, and universal justice. So the BRICS leaders have affirmed their commitment to continuing to uphold those values as we seek to create this new world order.
The other point of the declaration is what you mentioned earlier, inclusive growth and shared prosperity, and yet concerns that South Africa seems to be like the stepchild of the group, always holding out a hand to receive loans and overtures from the other leaders. What is our role?
There's nothing further from the truth. South Africa is not a stepchild. We're not the small S in BRICS. South Africa is an equal partner in terms of the values of BRICS. It speaks to mutual respect. It speaks to sovereign equality. It speaks to inclusiveness, democracy. But obviously, a lot of the other countries are bigger than us. I mean, you look at China with over 1 billion people as their population, and South Africa sitting, latest figures, is 57 million. So we are a smaller market. But while we are a smaller market, you have a lot of South African companies that have invested in China, have invested in India, Brazil, and elsewhere. In the same vein, we have those countries here. But being a small economy, a developing country, we continue to engage them for investment in our economy. Minister of Trade and Industry, Dr. Rob Davis, calls it investment-led trade. So it's a win-win relationship for all of us. But it's also the reason why South Africa speaks about the African continent as a whole. So when we signed the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and pushing regional integration, pushing continental integration, it is about creating a bigger market. I mean, we begin to equal the likes of China once you consolidate Africa into a single market, and our GDP is right up there. So we'll continue playing the role that we think we must, not just for ourselves, but the continent and the global south as a whole.
Some analysis saying the conference, the summit, is an opportunity for the group to take advantage of the protectionism conversation that's going on in America and the uncertainty in Europe. Have we been able to, did you get a sense that the group is taking that lifeline?
Oh, indeed. I think the heads of state are united on the fact that they reject unilateralism. They firmly believe in, uphold, and will continue to advance multilateralism in terms of resolution of world challenges. They've also spoken about ensuring that we have a rules-based trading environment throughout the world, underpinned by the principles of the World Trade Organization. The United Nations remains at the center. I think the declaration speaks to the fact that you cannot have any single country or countries acting unilaterally. The United Nations remains the one that must be at the center of ensuring any international action in any part of the world.
The multilateralism conversation has always included discussions about the possibility of addition of other members. You spoke now about BRICS Plus. Has any such conversation taken place?
Well, we do know that on the sidelines there are a number of countries that are lobbying the BRICS members. I mean, you don't apply to be a member of BRICS, so there are those conversations happening. There's nothing at this point. The presidents, the heads of state and government have also held bilateral talks, with the various other countries, and some of the issues that may not necessarily be raised in the sessions, they still get processed through BRICS, through those bilateral engagements. So it's early days yet to speak to any new members at this point, but I'm sure we'll keep an eye on them.
Let's talk about the program today, the outreach program and the retreat with the leaders. What can we expect? What can our viewers expect?
Well, the retreat has started, so it is just the heads of state of BRICS who are participating in that. They are looking obviously at the advances that we have made over the last 10 years. I mean, if you looked at the declaration that they adopted yesterday, they spoke about the successes that have been recorded over the last decade or so of cooperation, particularly in areas of job creation, which I think are very important for us as South Africans. I mean, just in our country, over 30,000 jobs have been created through investments that came from BRICS countries. But also they are looking at some of the commitments we've made in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. How do you ensure issues of cybersecurity are taken on board? So it's really just reviewing, the way forward from here. South Africa remains chairperson until the end of the year. And those are the discussions then that we're looking at. I mean, there's very interesting things that we've put at the center of our chairpersonship. The establishment of a BRICS Women's Forum. Sitting in some of the meetings, you'd notice that some of the delegations are all men. South Africa must commend itself.
Very worrying.
It is indeed, and I think those are the discussions we have with our partners. We share experiences and learnings and so forth. Then afterwards, it's your BRICS outreach program that starts, which I think at this point there's consideration to combine it with the BRICS Plus. Interesting participants, Desiree. Jamaica is here as the incoming chair of CARICOM.
We might be talking to them later.
Yes, Argentina is also here. Turkey is here. The heads of state are represented. And as you were saying, from Africa already a very strong showing. Zimbabwe has arrived, the head of state of Zambia, Togo, Senegal. We're looking forward to those engagements.
The BRICS summit might be a scheduled meeting, but each country leader comes with their own expectation. One magazine said the emperor's wish list. And one of the conversations we've inherited is the conversation about Russia and nuclear power. Tell us about the individual conversations President Ramaphosa has had with the different leaders and specifically talking about the nuclear conversation.
Okay, well, President Ramaphosa came here obviously within the context of BRICS and obviously, aligned to the objectives of the group and what we want to achieve. But at the center of his administration is attracting investment in order to create jobs and economic recovery in our economy. So he's been focused on that in the conversations that he's met with the president of Brazil, obviously reflecting on our trade relationship, feeling that it could be better. He has requested, sharing of skills, particularly in agriculture, wanting to send a delegation through to Brazil, just to strengthen our hand in that. He's also met with the president of India, looking at our trade relations, but we share a special time in history, if it may, with India. Both of us celebrating Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi and his arrival in South Africa. And then he met with Russia, as you're indicating. We've seen some positive movements in terms of the trade relationship with Russia. I think up 50% since last year. And we're looking at further cooperation. So in various areas, space exploration, President Putin is quite excited about. We're looking at cooperation around defense. We're looking at cooperation around energy. Now, as it relates to energy, President Ramaphosa has put our position as a country very clear that ours is our resource plan speaks to an energy mix where we'll continue to use fossil fuels. We've got a lot of coal. We're not going to close those mines anytime soon. We're looking at renewables, but we'll continue to use nuclear. Sometimes we forget that South Africa already has nuclear capacity in Kubeck Station and so forth. And there was an agreement that had been signed with Russia for cooperation around nuclear. It's still sitting in Parliament, not yet ratified. But the one thing that President Ramaphosa has reaffirmed is that if we expand our nuclear capacity, we will do so at a pace and scale that South Africa can afford. While we're still on track with our program of economic recovery, we would not at this point want to burden the fiscus with any major new initiatives of such nature.
I know we have to let you go, but we're speaking about massive projects here. What commitment can the president give to the South African public that you'll take us along as you negotiate this project so that we know detail and there's a sense of transparency?
That is the intention. In fact, it's the conversations that we're having all the time to say BRICS will come and BRICS will go. And what must remain must be a legacy of having changed the daily realities of our people. So, for example, Deji, just to give you a little sneak peek.
We like that.
Later this morning, President Putin as well as President Ramaphosa are expected to witness the signing of an agreement between Petro SA and Rosgeo, I think the company is called, which looks at exploration of oil reserves just off the shore of South Africa. Now, you'll know we're facing challenges in terms of our petrol prices, and this agreement where Russia is putting in about $500 million looks at how we're going to expand our capacity in terms of oil, petroleum and so forth. But also with an engagement with DTI to say that there's agreements that have been concluded here around water resources, around agricultural production and agro-processing. And we need to ensure that we have created systems for our people to, open pathways, as the president has said, for people to be able to participate in that. So through our agri-parks and all of these other programs that we're running, our intention is to ensure that South Africans, young people in particular, are able to benefit from those agreements.
That's really sweet to start your day. Thank you so much. Khusela Diko is the spokesperson for the presidency in South Africa, just giving us some sort of summing up the past few days as we try to unpack the events that have taken place since BRICS Summit 2018 started. You're watching The Agenda, and we'll continue to try and bring through people who can give us a sense of understanding of the events that took place here. Stay watching, and let's go back to Joburg for now.